Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Sustainable Growth Weekly. This week, we're talking about SEO for startups, and we're going to cover a bunch of things that startups specifically should consider when they're thinking about investing in SEO, or if they already have and you're thinking about how to make it work for you. I am the Director of Marketing, Chantal, and I have Mitch Briggs with me, who can introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Mitch Briggs. I'm one of our SEO success managers here. We used to be called consultants, but we changed our name to be more comprehensive, working day in and day out with different brands and different customers to kind of guide them through their SEO journey. Been doing this about 15 years, digital marketing and SEO. So excited to chat with you all today and answer any questions and kind of pass on any things we've learned over these years.
Mitch jokes he's been in SEO for centuries, and he's not far off. Okay, so quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We did our introductions, so we crossed that off the list. We're going to talk about building a category versus disrupting an existing category. A lot of people come to us and their main questions are around, what do I go after? And I think this is kind of a foundational part of answering that question. We'll talk about SEO in the context of the marketing funnel and how to scale SEO with a small team. And then we'll wrap up with the factors that matter the most for SEO for young companies. And throughout, please ask questions. We have obviously the chat, which you're familiar with. We also have a Q&A window, which I'll be keeping an eye on. So just fire away as they come to mind. And first, we're going to do a quick poll so I can get a sense of where everyone is at before we start talking about this topic. So which of you are building a new category versus disrupting an existing category? I'll let it run for about 10 more seconds. So far, we're 50-50. Ooh, disrupting existing is pulling ahead. Nice. Okay, I love seeing the poll come in real time, and it just hurts my heart that not everyone can see it. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So we have 40% are creating a new category and 60% are disrupting an existing category. So we'll be sure to speak to both as we work through these next few slides. All right. So category creation / disruption really comes down to keyword strategy. In my opinion, it's really like a decision of what you're trying to rank for and what you're trying to, when people are searching about this topic, like I want to be number one every time. So Mitch, I know this is such a common question for you. Let's just dive in. Like if someone is building a category, what do they need to think about?
Yeah, for sure. I think the big kind of headline when you start thinking about even SEO in general is, and these are not my words. I've heard these echoed many times from other kind of SEO experts that SEO and content marketing isn't necessarily demand gen. It's demand capture, right? There still has to be the activity of someone doing the search. They have to be putting in the keywords and seeking out information about a certain topic or solving a certain problem. So whether you're building a new category or disrupting that existing, it still starts, at least from an SEO standpoint, what existing demand is there, what existing questions are being asked, what existing problems need solved that people are actually looking for content around or information about, and then how can you be helpful in those key moments. So that bullet point about marketing funnel, and I think Chantal, we're going to talk more about how you like map that to the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking, really it all starts with audience,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how does that buying process go? How does that education process go to realize they have a problem that maps to a solution that would eventually lead them to you to be convinced that you're the one that can solve that. There's probably key points along that journey where the Googling is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the Googling is happening just to solve a quick problem. Sometimes the Googling is happening because they're putting together a list of vendors to go after and start talking to.
Mm-hmm.
That's where if you're kind of inside an existing category, you get to benefit because people might know, I need a CRM system, I need a marketing automation tool, I need a call center knowledge management system,
Mhm.
whatever it is that already exists. They maybe even purchased it before. They're going to go back to that well, search that same thing, and start looking for, a list of vendors to go after, and you need to be
Yeah,
there, right?
totally. And there's kind of like a few different angles that we could take here. There's um your category name might be a thing that no one is Googling yet.
Right.
But the type of solution that you are, like if you're similar to a CRM but better, like you might want to show up for those terms initially while you're still building content for this term that no one might be searching yet, but you want to dominate it once people start searching. But then
Right.
there's always also pain points that people can be searching and trying to solve problems that they have that do not even mention the category term.
Exactly. Right. So if you think, hey, I'm trying to build a new category, you don't get the nice benefit of having that clear thing to play in, and that clear set of search terms that, hey, that's my category, I need to show up. It takes a little bit more creativity to think not just other related categories like you're saying, but also that person, right? That individual that's within that company that plays that role. What problems do they have that you could at least get in front of them about and educate them about this new thing? What are then the closer those problems are related to the solutions you have, maybe they're not actually searching with the word software or platform or service or something that indicates more buying intent. You have to go a little more up funnel and be more educational uh, about what it is that's kind of in living in those niches and living in the peripheral of
Mhm.
that existing category. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't also kind of create some content around the new term,
Yeah.
right? There's a huge advantage of being first to create that page, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know,
Especially for CEOs like on podcasts and they're saying like this is what our category is, and then people are like, oh, what's that, and they give it a Google. It's like you want your website to be up there.
exactly. Yes, you still need to be there in case someone does use your new term.
Mhm.
And it's just not gonna, through your traditional keyword research activities, you're probably not gonna see it pop up in the list. And if it does, it might have zero or no, 10 searches or a month or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but not all visitors to your site are equal in terms of value. So you have to think, um, even if there's extremely low search volume, I have to get 100% of those, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thinking, don't necessarily wait to build that page because there's not a lot of search volume.
Mhm.
I would say, start with that first and then start building out from there.
Mhm. One last thing I'll say about creating a new category is like, I think there's this, uh, what's the word? It's common for founders, I think, to try and draw a really hard line and basically say, like, we did not create a chatbot. We do not want to be associated with chatbots. We are better than a chatbot. But like, if someone is searching for a chatbot and you could, you could rank for a chatbot, and at the top of that page, you could explain why you're better than or different than the chatbot that everyone knows about already.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you want to create a boundary between like the existing players in a related space and what you offer, it's like, if it's a relevant audience seeking to solve something similar to what you solve, like you can still rank for it, but maintain a boundary and explain to people how you're different, like immediately in your H1 or in your subtitle. Like
Right.
I don't know, I think I've definitely heard of prospects at least saying like, oh, we don't want to rank for that. It's like, you definitely want to rank for that. And you can very succinctly explain how you're different.
Exactly. I think too, it's separating what are other marketing materials and even what's on your homepage and what you call yourself as like your tagline, your message to the market, what you say you are in your LinkedIn profile doesn't necessarily have to match up with what you've created as a landing page to meet that person where they're at when they're doing a particular search.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we don't call ourselves chatbot software, but on this one page we do, and we produce content around chatbot software. But like you said, we're quickly trying to convince that person what they need is this different version or slightly different category called XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
A good example from one of my customers was they do a service similar to like appointment setting or like lead generation. And one of the keywords was outsourcing BDRs. And they're like, well, we're not technically an outsourced BDR service, but we perform and solve a similar problem.
Yeah.
So let's create a page that's talks about outsourcing BDRs.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros and cons? Be helpful to the audience, but
Yeah.
also have a clear, I think the actual title was something like why you should consider not outsourcing BDRs. You know,
Exactly.
like,
Like how we do it better.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
almost like an anti-content, even though it's focused on, you
Yeah.
know, the intent of someone doing that search.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if someone is disrupting an existing category, especially if you're a new, maybe seed stage startup and you have a really small website, like you don't have the same authority that your existing competitors have in the market, how should people think about that?
Yeah, that one's a little more tougher. I think because there's going to be that temptation, you know, if you're, especially if you're in a very large established space that, um, you know, just putting up a page about CRM software will not get you on page one very anytime
Yeah.
soon.
It's more
Um,
competitive. Yeah.
so yeah, so then it's really about thinking about the category itself and all the questions being asked within the category. Maybe there's specific audiences that you serve within that. So look for
Mm-hmm.
different modifiers of keywords. So maybe it's, you know, CRM software for healthcare or even more niche than that, right? What are the different ways or like latest trends or new innovations in certain area? You know, what are those things that people are seeking um, that might be kind of again on that that outer edge of the actual category itself? Um, and how can you start building out a really well-rounded piece of uh, really like a connected bubble of content around the entire category, um, as well as kind of doing that same thing of you have to quickly explain why you're different on those pages
Mm-hmm.
in addition to being helpful.
Yeah. And that's kind of getting towards like our convincing the non-believers point here of like, if no one's ever heard of you and you show up in organic as like CRM software for plumbers, like,
Right.
but they're like, oh, I've never heard of this one. Um, but I guess before we go there, um, I do want to talk a little bit about using the existing competitors in the space to help determine what terms you should go after. And I think you make a fantastic point, which is like when a startup is just getting going, say they're trying to disrupt Salesforce, like it's definitely best practice to start with a smaller ICP than Salesforce's ICP. So it all comes back to audience again. And like, who are your early customers going to be? What are they searching? How are they probably different than Salesforce customers or whatever? And just kind of, yeah, thinking about the go-to-market foundation that your business has set and matching that with your search strategy.
Right. And what is the reason you exist in terms of, okay, you're disrupting this market. So
Mm.
is there something
That
unique about
differentiates. Yeah.
you? Are you more efficient? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you save people time? Do you connect with another platform that nobody else does? You know, think of all those unique selling points you have too, and try to find keywords that match that and build
Mm-hmm.
content there around maybe a specific feature instead of just the whole category.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you're a CRM that, you know, automatically using AI calls people on the phone. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like think about all those things that make you unique and you know, kind of your message to the market and how that could line up.
Yeah, and that's very like pain relief oriented too. Like faster CRM, whatever it is. Thinking about
Yep.
the, yeah, you have a term for
Modern,
that.
easy to
Pain
use.
modifier. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Mhm. All right, let's touch on convincing the non-believers. So we're going to talk about like what a demand page or a pillar page looks like later, but I think it's worth just mentioning here. If you're a new player in the space, how do you make yourself look believable, competitive, whatever?
Yeah, I think I even think the next slide might be a good
Yeah.
thing to look at too, which is like it's all about
Hmm.
that attract and convince.
Yep.
So um there's two real types of content that can do both, right? You, typically what attracts them, at least from the search standpoint, is that you've created helpful content, typically long form content that
Hmm.
is comprehensive about a problem or a
And
subject
you're
matter.
on the first page or the first two pages or
Right.
whatever. Hmm.
And then the convincing part is a little bit more unique to you, a little bit more what we'd call that like quality content. So video, testimonials, um, taglines, bullet points, kind of that stuff that is you'd call like typical
Hmm.
marketing content, your brochure stuff. Um, Having a page that can and a page type that can house both of that. I think a
Hmm.
lot of times startups rush to start blogging
Yep.
and they generate a lot of that long form content, and they might start getting some early organic traffic to those pages. But what's there is typically that blog post format that's long form text and missing a lot of those like key elements to convert someone. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's just at the bottom of the page, it's like want a demo. It's kind of just
Mhm.
like, okay. Um,
Exactly. I think that's a good point. It's like if the ask is to take a demo and there's no trust built, it's kind of like, okay, I roll just another startup trying to disrupt whatever space.
mhm,
Whereas, like, if you're delivering value through branded marketing content, um, there's a little more of a give and take there that might,
yeah,
yeah, you're asking someone to jump from never having heard about you all the way to the bottom of the funnel in the span of the 30 seconds that they're looking at your website. So
right.
you need to kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Yep. And video is a great way to do that.
Mhm.
Whether it's a quick product overview, really hitting on those points of like, we do this, we help do this, we solve this problem. If that's you, let's keep talking.
Mhm.
Like have that conversation, so to speak, on the page quickly.
Mhm.
Um, to kind of qualify those people as I'm just kicking the tires, I'm just kind of learning about this subject versus, hey, something I just saw in that bullet point or in that video really spoke to me as a pain that I'm experienced. So I'm going to take that next step and talk with
Mhm.
somebody.
Mhm.
Um,
Totally.
so if you're just starting out, right, like what kind of content should I focus on at the beginning? Um, I would really make sure you kind of have your house in order before you start inviting guests. um, Make sure you have that at least one or two of those pieces, and then you can do these things on parallel tracks because just the attraction part is what takes longer.
Mhm.
So there's a strategy where you can just start publishing, and then as people start showing up
Yeah.
at your house, you can quickly clean up. But
Really tidy
uh,
up. Yeah. You have
yeah,
like a 5 minute warning, I would say.
right. You should be able
Yeah.
to at least see if things are starting to
Yeah.
trend your way. But I think having all those things, at least from like a um, the message to the market, the clear thing that we're there, that like when people land on this site, I have a way to convince them of who we are and what we do quickly.
Mhm.
Um, then you can start scaling out what that page type looks like.
Yeah. We have some examples of that toward the end of this. This is just kind of a quick overview of what we've been talking about, where quality performance, when we say that, we mean basically branded content. Think of your ebook downloads, think of the things that will not drive an SEO impact on your site. And then your performance content is your SEO performance copy. That's the thing that actually gets people to your page. But then the quality content is on top. And you can think about it in a couple different ways. One is that your performance content is the thing that actually helps you capture the attention of the people who are searching for terms related to what you do. So you can think of it as a distribution channel for your quality content as well, if your quality content's at the top of your page. Um, and then that's the thing that you use to actually convert your audience.
Yeah, That's a great example too of I have customers that have several pages,
Mhm.
that are doing well in search. They have consistent folks coming in visiting on really, I'd say good low funnel keywords.
Mhm.
And then when they have a new video or they have a new ebook or they have a new blog post that's really thought leadership oriented, or if someone would read this, they'd be convinced to see the world like we do and then buy from
Mhm.
us. um, they don't have to spend as much money
On
pu-
ads.
pushing that out, right?
Yeah.
They now have enough content and enough daily audience. Why we talk about like sustainable growth
Mhm.
is because you can just populate it out to the relevant pages on your own real estate,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
people, you're,
It's
you're
like an
getting
owned audience almost. It's like fresh new viewers all the time, but it feels more like having an email list than like having to push out a paid ad, or it's less like interruption oriented and more like this is an existing thing that I'm nurturing that's I don't have to pay for.
exactly. So
Mhm.
that actually led them to produce more of this quality content and this branded
Mhm.
content thought leadership, because now they have essentially a platform that they can throw it out there and have it just be consumed on more like a drip basis than
Mhm.
put money, LinkedIn ads, push out, do an email blast, which I know is a
Yep.
dated term, uh, but I still like saying blast. Uh, keep doing that, spending time, money. You might get some spikes in that, but as soon as that's over, do you have to either keep spending and doing that again? Who's
Yeah.
coming in, 8 o'clock at night, that just has to be, reading on this subject. So kind of
Mhm.
meeting them in their day to day and when they're ready to consume it versus continuing to push it out.
Mhm. Totally. Um, okay. This kind of just like summarizes our perspective on the way that search engines function to fill in a gap that you have in your demand. So basically, um, buyer search to the funnel, we all know this. Um, you have a solution that solves those problems that people are searching for. And it's really just about making sure that you're showing up when and where people are searching throughout their journey. Yep. And so getting it so that the search engine is showing your site. This kind of goes into a little bit our perspective on how to show up across the funnel. If you all were able to join us when we did a keyword research session, this might look familiar to you, but we have kind of a few different concepts that support this idea that you can show up when people are searching through the marketing funnel with some kind of intent. It doesn't have to be a super bottom of funnel term for someone to be indicating that they have intent to buy. So if you're a content marketing tool, you might want to be showing up for what is content marketing template. You also want to be showing up for the more bottom of funnel content marketing platform, software, tool. And you also might want to be showing up when people are looking for reviews or pricing, or they're clearly like doing some kind of RFP. Is that what it's called? RFP
Mhm.
research. Um, and then the audience modifiers that we talked about before. Um, you can also do pain modifiers that are like, faster content marketing software or cheaper or better or whatever. And then you also might want to include some stuff that indicates who the people are that are searching to make it more specific to them. So you might end up with something like content marketing software for startups. That's a highly specific thing. You want to have all of those buyers landing on your site when they're searching for something like that.
Yeah. And again, it's really starts with the audience and knowing them too, right? I think that's an advantage of being in a startup
Uh-huh.
is your customers are a little closer to you, and even in the marketing department, um, have those conversations with existing customers, be on sales calls and hear, or listen to how people are finding you, what their pain points are. Like consume as much of that as you can early on to really understand the process and and what your market craves and how they go about their processes. I work with a company that serves schools, and specifically like in the like computer science curriculum and education space. So they know that there's certain grants being available state by state. They all have different names, the Step Up program and the this program. Like, so teachers, administrators are going to go and search for information about those specific programs and grant
Mhm.
monies and their kind of seasonal things that they have to be aware of. So it would make sense for them to be the one that educates them state by state, even on what what grants are available and what applies to our curriculum and what doesn't. You
Mhm.
know, it's all about that's the audience. It might be very top funnel, but if they're searching for information about the education grant, next step might be actually implementing a curriculum. So you can see how those things start to tie together. So each audience has their unique little behaviors like that are really uh, important to understand. And how does that translate into Googling, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, it reminds me also of the software customer that we have that supports like at home chefs who sell their food. They have a bunch of pages that are um, that help people understand the state by state laws for selling food from your home. Um, so it just, yeah, it's a highly specific um, search that like I don't know, it's hard for me to think of an example of like a company that is similar but would not want to show up for those things. But it really differentiates against existing players in the space.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to start talking about scalability. So I'm going to run this poll to see how big people's marketing teams are. I just launched it, so I'll give it 30 seconds. You all could fill it out. All right, we got one person, we got two people, we got four people. We got, oh, interesting, but no threes. All right, I'll give it about 10 more seconds. Cool. Now I'm going to share the results. So we got some small teams here. We have a few one-person marketing teams, a few two-person marketing teams, and a few four-person marketing teams. So definitely startup marketers. God bless startup marketers. I saw this meme recently that said it's from The Lion King, and Simba and his father are looking out over, and it's when the father says like everything the light touches is yours. And I feel like the equivalent for startup marketers is everything the light touches is your problem to solve. Um, so I'm sure everyone here can relate.
Everything the internet touches. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to speak to basically the challenges that we see people have when it comes to scaling content. Do you want to talk about analysis paralysis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's always a tough one too, is when you have limited resources, you really want to make sure that any actions you take have the most impact, right? And that's a natural thing to think through. Um, and then, I don't want anyone to just like not think at all. um, but there's so many meetings about what we should be doing sometimes that we aren't doing. And when, specifically around SEO, I think uh, for startups in particular, when you're starting with essentially an online brochure and the goal is to build out 40, 50 pages over the next year to really spread a large net,
Mhm.
um, to capture, all the demand that's being generated, or all the people in your audience that are searching. The longer you wait, the more, it's kind of like a waterfall of people. It's just, if you don't start putting your bucket out to try to catch some, it every day you're kind of missing the opportunity. Um, and
Yeah.
for some startups, time is really valuable there too. So um, I think the analysis part definitely all the things we talked about, right, is where I think a lot of the energy should be spent.
Mhm.
Understanding the audience, understanding that keyword journey and how that maps to your specific product, service, solution. putting those even into groups to say, all right, here's this category and all the related terms. Here's this category and all the related terms. I think the analysis paralysis part actually starts after that's done. And they
Mhm.
say, how
Have a
does all
hard
this
time starting to
research
create. Yeah,
actually turn into a page type on my,
yeah,
because that's when everyone has an opinion on what it should look like, what it should
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Um, and that's where I think, really thinking about templates and think about these as almost like
Mhm.
individual landing pages designed to match how someone's searching and
Yeah.
educate them. Um,
Well, I
if you
think it's both. It's like there's the templatizing, there's the page itself, and then there's the content creation. I feel like you have to set a different standard for both
Mhm.
than a lot of marketers are used to. And actually we can kind of share these two. I'll open up these pages because this is a good example of a page that we have um used a template for, and then one that we have improved a little bit to be more relevant because we started to drive traffic. So, all right. And Mitch, yeah, feel free to like speak through this, but basically this is our most templatized page that we have for our own internal pillar content. It's basically just the homepage, or a version of the homepage that is now less relevant than it once was. But this is like the standard thing that we just pump out content with. We just use this template, make the content, add the SEO copy at the bottom. Once we actually start ranking, and once we're maybe driving impressions or traffic, then we'll try to optimize the page for conversion because we actually have people arriving at the page. Otherwise, we'd be wasting a ton of time like optimizing 30 pages if, 3 of those actually become really high ranking. So we have like a relevant video at the top here. We have this TLDR, which is like handwritten by someone. And then we have specific kind of little features identified that are highly relevant to content audits, instead of just like generic homepage copy. You want to talk through other examples of that or how you see people do that?
Ooh, great question there, Emma, because I think
Mhm.
that's a common one is,
Mhm.
and that's part of the planning too,
Mhm.
is thinking about different content types. I think the default one is like, let's start blogging and we'll just put all the information there.
Yeah.
But I think one of the advantages of being kind of in a startup or at the beginning of this journey is you can be more intentional about how that content is grouped together. Whether that's, we're going to call it a resource library or a set of guides or explainers, and those can kind of live as separate, more evergreen pages that maybe like live in their own cluster in the navigation.
Mhm.
So if you had a resources drop down, you can differentiate between your
Yeah.
blog that you might use for product updates and thought leadership, FAQs, guides,
Mhm.
product releases, customer stories. Like think about, once you kind of have that landscape of keywords that you're looking at, are there themes among those keywords that would lend themselves to different content types? If it's a lot of what is and things like that, or maybe you're in an industry that has a lot of acronyms, maybe you need to build that into more of a glossary format and have them clustered that way, or an FAQ.
Mhm.
If there are just a lot of big category searches, guides might be the way to go. You need something more comprehensive to talk about the entire topic. Um, so I have a lot of customers that will do it that way, kind of cluster them into these groups. And then there's others that will really almost have them live outside the navigation altogether. You don't want them to live as orphan pages because they won't, get indexed and have that SEO value. But I think the old school uh, HTML sitemap is something we help people create, which is
Mhm.
essentially a page on your site that just lists all your content that you'd say is SEO valuable. So if you're kind of building very similar pages using a template like this, um, you can have them kind of live as their own um, page, either clustered in a group or on it, as part of the sitemap. And really, they serve as like these entrance pages from search, which is why your homepage is sometimes a good place to start, like Chantal was saying.
Mhm.
That's what you're expecting, someone that just lands right on that page. So now think, if they're Googling something and landing right on your site, what does that page look like? And how do you educate them? A lot of those elements that you're using in your homepage layout, you can probably clone and utilize maybe in a different organization. Some will put more things up front and have the content at the bottom. Um, but I think even having a mix, kind of like what Chantal was showing, where there's a summary there, and then there's some relevant things, and then there's a CTA, and then there's another paragraph with examples, kind of spreading that content out throughout the page to create a really nice experience for somebody, versus just like, big block of text or big block of this.
Mhm.
Um, Having that balance, I think, is what I've seen work really well for pillar page type layouts.
Yeah. And just for context, like within our resources sort of tab here, the only thing that is SEO content is the FAQs. And then everything else lives on our sitemap, which is linked down at the bottom in the footer, but otherwise not part of the main nav of the site. And then like Mitch said, obviously we have some customers who create a knowledge center that does live like right up in their resources, and that's all of their SEO content. So it really just depends on the goal and what the content is doing for people.
Mhm.
Great question, Emma. Thank you. Last thing I want to say, or last thing I want to discuss on this topic is just, actually, I mean, two things. I do want to talk about creating weekly goals, but in terms of like subject matter expert content versus SEO content, I think like we get into this tricky situation sometimes with people where um it's like I think the default feeling around what goes on the website is that it needs to be like Shakespeare. I mean, not really, but it needs to, the SEO copy that you write does not need to be nearly as thought out as like the headline on your homepage. Like it's not copywriting in the same way. It serves a slightly different purpose. The purpose of SEO copy is to inform, educate, answer the question that people will presumably have when they land on your page. But if we're being honest, like it's 1,500 words, and to be successful at all, you need to be cranking out like at least a page a week. So no one has time that I know personally to make this like, I don't know quite the right way to say it, but Mitch, I feel like you have to deal with this a lot. And I
Mhm.
think just changing the way that we think about SEO content as like, it's neutral. It's like a Wikipedia page. It doesn't have to encapsulate your brand voice necessarily, like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be written by a subject matter expert. It should be like 101 level information.
Yeah, I think that's the real key, is
Mhm.
it's different from your actual brand voice. Um, it needs to be factually correct. It needs to be
Mhm.
comprehensive. It might need to go into an area um, that necessarily you wouldn't call even marketing, right? You might even talk about a competitor or the other players in the space
Mhm.
or the trends in the market, right? You're trying to create a piece of content that is comprehensive and helpful. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily the job of that content to convince, after they read that content, wow, everything they said leads me to want to work with them, right?
Yeah.
That's not the job of the content.
Mhm.
Um, you have other elements on your page where that's the
That's the
job,
job of the quality content at the
right?
top.
Your
Yeah.
thought leadership or links to
The
things
brand
of
content.
related, you know,
Yeah.
this is all about the attraction, right?
Mhm.
And you attract by being helpful, you attract by being neutral. You don't attract with a big, thesis on why we're the best, right? It's not branded marketing copy.
Mhm.
It's literally informational, helpful content. So separating those two sides of the house and the expectations of those things, if you try to make one do both, you usually end up with the hybrid problem of doing both jobs poorly.
Mediocre. Yeah, yeah.
Right. You have a great piece of content that has all your brand messages in there and ties things together into your product and is in your voice, but it doesn't rank well.
Mhm.
So because you're not thinking about, maybe including some of the co-occurrence terms or some of the other related things people are searching for, or answering all the right questions. Um, and then same on the other side, if you just write a page that's just boring information, but you have no, kind of spice in there of your own marketing content, you might get the users, but you're not converting them.
Mhm.
So finding that balance of like when to utilize a subject matter expert and when to utilize um, maybe a freelance writer or someone that can go off of, you giving them a creative brief and saying, I just need 1,500 words
Mhm.
about this topic and include these things.
Totally. Like pull in your CEO and talk to them in preparation for the blog post that's about your category and like why it's so much better than the other things. Um, but don't no need to tap in the founder for your SEO copy.
hmm And then workflow wise, yeah, I think that's where you can start separating those things, right?
And driving efficiencies.
What pages need to have
Mhm.
1,500 words added, or do I need to start building this library of information? How am I going to do that? Um, am I going to do creative outlines and send them out? Am I going to use AI? Am I going to, you know, start with, a certain category or cluster of keywords and work through that? Um, but setting those kind of weekly cadences, weekly goals of, kind of publishing on a weekly basis. How many are we going to build out? What are maybe another cluster I'm going to go after? Um, Different. It's almost like building campaigns, like you would in any other kind of marketing project, but you're going to build out a whole region of your website to try to attract in a new audience.
Yeah. And we as a company have basically always tried to make 5 pages a week. And then we sort of reduce those if we're doing like a big conversion rate optimization project that's going to take up a bunch of time. But even 5 pages a week, if drive efficiency in your workflow and are really strict on your weekly goals, like it's only part of someone's job. Um, it's like quarter time or something of a full-time employee's job or even less. So not everyone has to do that many, but it's just kind of a good reference point, I think.
hmm
Okay, so we're about to start talking about the factors of SEO that matter the most for startups. I don't have a poll for this one because I was thinking it would probably be more qualitative, and I just didn't want to have like 30 options. So, if you guys could drop into the chat the main SEO, the main things that you're trying to impact with SEO right now, and I think some examples could be like page speed or number of keywords that we rank for, or um, the list goes on, but feel free to drop in the chat what you're focusing on today. We're focusing on CRO internally right now, if that is helpful for everyone. All right, we don't have a very talkative crew right now. All good. We're just gonna keep the train rolling. So we basically boil down the factors that impact SEO into 3 buckets. There's infrastructure, content, and endorsements, and they each have their own role to play. Mitch, can you share what is the most important for startups?
Yeah, I think when you think about these three, right, infrastructure is like the technical part of a website. I think I'd put that as probably the least impactful, least important thing to focus on for a startup.
Mhm.
90% of what you have, the luxury of being new is you're probably on a more modern CMS. You're using more modern templates. You're not stuck with any kind of technical debt or inheriting some large website that you have to clean up. Um, you might have 10, 15, 30 pages that you can easily get a handle on. Um, Page speed, probably not yet an issue. All of those things are like things that you can revisit and later to kind of make sure you're checking as many of those best practice boxes as you can.
Mhm.
But for the most part, you're probably very well off from like a um, you versus the rest of the internet in terms of like the quality of your site. You know, I doubt
Mhm.
any of you are kind of on any like homegrown CMSs or anything like that.
From
You
the
have less to
90s.
focus on there.
Yeah.
The other part is, you know, which is why I think content, that middle one, is really that main focus. Um, you know, there's all this searching going on. You have a 7-page site. You have to build that out to match as much of what people are looking for as possible, as quickly as possible. Um, the quicker you can understand what that market looks like and what you want to go after, and understand the gaps you have in content, put together a workflow and strategy to attack it,
Mhm.
that's always going to be kind of the most impactful thing you can do from an SEO standpoint.
Mhm. And to Manisha's goal in the chat, her main focus right now is to increase the number of keywords that they rank for.
Yep.
So I think that's, creating content is the way that you do that. That's really doing all the heavy lifting
Right.
um,
Yep. This
for
is the
that type of
way.
goal.
An
Yeah.
individual page can only rank for so many different keywords, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
It's best to kind of give every page a target term or set of terms. And if there's a term that, let's say you publish a page and there's a keyword that you might start ranking for, but you're like ranking 30th or 40th or something.
Hmm.
Make a new page focusing more on that page, on that particular keyword, if it differentiates itself enough.
Hmm.
So if it was like, let's say we created an SEO guide and SEO strategy or keyword research was ranking for that, but the page is about SEO as overall, it would be better for us to kind of, instead of trying to make that page rank for more keywords, to just break that off as a new page and link it together and create, you know, more individual URLs focused more on an individual set of terms. That's
Hmm.
kind of how you can grow that organic footprint.
Yeah.
Um,
We've talked a lot about that in a previous SG Weekly episode, which if people are curious about it, feel free to drop it in the chat and I can share it with you. But we talked a lot about like, what does it take to actually rank for a term? And how do you think about that in the context of like all the terms you want to go after? Um, which yeah, it's a lot. I don't, before I came to Demandwell, I wasn't familiar with the idea that you would create a specific page for every single term that you want to rank for. And there's obviously like a keyword cluster strategy involved as well. Making sure your pillar content is supported. You sacrifice some pages because they bolster up other pages. But yeah, you can make it as complicated as you want, but the main point is you have to crank out a lot of content
yeah,
if you want to rank for stuff. Okay, and then
I,
endorsements wise, you made a really good point when we were chatting before about how startups are actually in some ways like it's like don't waste your energy on this, but you are uniquely positioned to take advantage of getting backlinks, basically.
right.
Yeah.
Backlinks are what we say. Is a fancy word. Endorsements is the fancy word for sites linking back to you, and
Yeah.
that still very much is part of Google's algorithm. It's what makes Google, you know, part of why it's successful is it takes those into consideration with rankings. It's like a vote of popularity, and
Mhm.
so getting, you know, reputable sites to link back to you is going to be um, part of what you need to get started on, because the the disadvantage is that you're probably a new domain, not a lot of content, not a lot of people linking to you. So you have to prove like, well, why should you rank me?
Mhm.
And so you have some catching up to do in the domain authority uh, um, bucket. So, but
Mhm.
your newness is also your advantage because you're probably doing more PR related activities already. Your founder, co-founder, marketing people, salespeople are probably going out more and more and trying to, whether they're sitting on a podcast, you have news that you're trying to get out there, press releases around, maybe you raised a round of funding, all these profiles and things that you can go be a member of, or joining associations, making sure you're on G2, all of that activity that
Mhm.
goes beyond, you know, the owned media of your content, taking advantage of that earned media and making sure there's always somebody has that lens of can I get a link out of this activity, or
Mhm.
even a brand mention on a page somewhere, like some other site has referenced your name, whatever, probably a cool sounding startup name that, you know, um, if more people are Googling your name, if more, all of those things are, kind of part of that swirl of authority that can build up over time. So I remember I was at a startup and we had a Series A, and it was, our founder was like, you only get one of these.
Mhm.
Um, and so we have to maximize everything we can get out of this one event where we're going to have all this attention and people visiting our site. So like,
Yeah.
what are all the things we can need to consider? And SEO is a big part of that, right? If somebody's going to have you on their podcast and interview about it, make sure when they publish that episode that they put a link to you. If somebody's going to write a story about you on their blog, make sure they mention you and link back to you.
Mhm.
Those little tiny asks can make a big difference long term for your SEO.
Yeah, and this is kind of like the way that your more brand oriented marketing content can actually impact SEO. Like I think before we said, like, don't try to get your blog post, your product announcement posts, like don't try to get that to rank for SEO. But if you have a new integration with someone and you write this fantastic piece about how you're better together,
Hmm.
um, like try to get them to publish it on their site also and try to get them to link back to you in that post. Um, you know,
Yeah, as you're building out partnerships with different organizations, are you linking to them and are they linking to you? Yeah,
Yeah.
great point.
um, totally. So we are basically at the end of our content, I think. So now's a great time. We have 6 more minutes. So please, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And we have Mitch as a captive question answerer for just a bit longer. He won't be coming back for another month onto SG Weekly. So it's really now or never, folks. Um, if you also, obviously, if you'd like a demo of Demandwell, because this all sounds so overwhelming and you want to see how we can help, drop it in the chat. I can assist. And otherwise, thanks for joining. I'm not seeing any questions. So I think,
I do have a story.
oh,
Ooh,
great.
salesperson. Here we go. We
Oh,
got
great. We
some
have
questions. Here you go.
questions.
All
Fun.
right.
Okay. We'll be patient here.
Yeah, we need like the thing that shows people, hey, someone's typing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, I care a ton about leads, salesperson. Yes. How long does it estimate? Yeah. Okay. So that kind of goes with my story too. So I think
Mhm.
as a salesperson, this is critical to not only, want the leads coming, but to give that feedback to the marketing team about how that person found you, why or why not they were a good fit, what expectations were misaligned from their online experience. And part of that story was I was working for a startup that had developed like a mobile app development platform. It was very low cost and it was very DIY. And so we went out to, there's all these different use cases for it. Everything from like small colleges to associations, churches, people were wanting to build, small, easy to use mobile apps that they could communicate with their audience. Um, so we were building content to serve those different audiences, and then we just tried to build some content around like, well, how do we get into like enterprise, how do we get into actual companies, um, what would they use a mobile app for? Is it to, so employee engagement was the space. um, we didn't have a product for that. We did not have um, a way to actually service that in particular industry, or at least we didn't think we did. But we built the content anyway, and we started getting leads and people asking to demo this employee engagement mobile app. And we asked the salespeople to be a little patient with us because it was them and kind of the product marketing team that through that exercise, because we started getting leads of people asking about this, um, we were able to learn what they would expect and show them what our product was, show them where there were gaps, develop features based on that feedback. So much so that the entire company pivoted to become employee engagement. It was literally what we thought we wanted to serve an audience. Because a new audience started showing up at our door and asking questions, giving us feedback, we realized there was a huge market there, pivoted everything towards that. as an entire company. So as a salesperson, as a marketer, especially in the startup environment, you can use this content and the keyword research kind of as the tip of the spear into these different markets,
Mhm.
and understand that there might be a different use case for our product that we're not quite aware of or didn't realize when we first went to market, that now we're going to go test the waters with content and get that type of feedback in. But to
Mhm.
answer your question, Max, around how long, it kind of usually, I think, um, I've seen it happen rather quickly, especially in startups that have a really nice niche category that already exists, that they're basically able to, within 3-4 months, start building content, get those low funnel people looking for that type of solution to come
Yeah.
in with not just download leads, but full on, I need a demo. So
Yeah.
I think,
I think, I mean, we did a big study on how quickly people were able to drive leads like within our customer base. And what we found was that it's really not a time question. It's a how much content have you created question, which takes time, but certain customers are really aggressive and they create a ton of content really quickly. And then they see they'll double their traffic, but it's like you have to create at least 50 pieces of content to do that. And then it's about how well does your site convert generally. And it's just a math equation at that
right.
point. Um, I do want to answer Susie's question. It's a very good
Ooh,
one.
yeah.
She said that they have a sitemap, which is in Google Search Console. So I'm guessing it's an XML sitemap, but they don't have one on their website per se. Should we?
Yeah, I think so, Susie. Especially if you already have a lot of existing content or plan to build a lot of more content that might not necessarily live in the navigations. Um, I would build basically, we call it an HTML sitemap because it's literally just a page on your site that lists the other pages. The XML is something that's usually more auto-generated by your CMS and is something, yeah, you'd want to submit for Google Search Console. This is literally just a page full of the most valuable SEO assets or valuable pages you have. Um, we actually find users visit them more than we thought to actually navigate your site,
Yeah.
because it is helpful to just see it all laid out on one page.
Mhm.
Um, so it creates really good internal linking automatically without you having to kind of go into every page and link them together. So I would recommend it, particularly if you have a larger site, that instead of having all these silos of information, it can help make it more flat. And
Mhm.
then, or if you plan to build out a lot of content, put that into place.
I just learned last week in our technical Q&A, technical SEO Q&A, or 2 weeks ago, SG Weekly, that the reason you want an HTML sitemap and that you want it to be in the footer is that you constantly have little bots crawling all the sites that they know about. And what they do is they follow all the links. And so a page that might not be indexed yet might be discovered by a bot because you've put it in your sitemap and it's linked right next to the homepage, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably butchered that explanation, but that was my
No,
answer.
that's good.
Cool. All right. Well, we are at time. Thank you everyone for sticking around and for asking such great questions today. It was a really fantastic SG Weekly, and we hope to see you next week. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.